I just want I've been waiting for you.
Security has been breached.
You're all going to die down here.
They have only 3 hours left before it begins infecting and mutating the whole human race.
Game over. Isn't it nice to know someone wants you for your body?
Yeah, depending on what they want.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Sleazoids, the podcast where we go down the rabbit hole of 20th century genre fare, from the most influential canon classics to the trashiest exploitation films we can get our hands on, and invite you to tag along in helping us create a canon of sleaze. Each week is a double feature grindhouse style where we discuss 2 films loosely related by subject, genre, actor, filmmaker, or franchise, and at the end of each episode, along with our honorary Sleazoids, which you can become by subscribing on Patreon.
Do it.
There, he was on time.
You better do it.
We decide on all the official ratings and rankings for every film that we cover. Patreon subscribers also get an on-air shout-out and 2 bonus episodes every single month, which I do believe it's been over a year of bonus episodes. We have 24 or 25 episodes waiting for you over on Patreon if you haven't made the jump yet. So if you haven't yet, consider doing that. It helps us out, and there's a whole lot of movie talk waiting for you.
Hours and hours of movie talking.
That's the one plug. What's the other plug? Oh, yeah. SoundCloud, iTunes, Spotify,
YouTube.
We're available
got it all now.
On every podcast listener of choice. As far as we know, no one has yelled at us for not being on one yet.
Yep.
So
we're doing
wherever
it.
You're listening to us, though, on iTunes especially, if you guys have been, listening and liking the show, go give us a good old rating and review over there. It helps us find new listeners, and we appreciate that as well. So, yeah. Welcome back to another week. I think 2 weeks ago would have been the last time you guys, free listeners, would have heard from us, and we would have been talking late Vietnam nightmare cinema. We talked Jacob's Ladder, 1990, directed by Adrian Lin, starring Tim Robbins, which documented the dreamy psychological breakdown, psychedelic style of a Vietnam war vet, and we got into some pretty deep spoilers on that episode.
Oh yeah, as always,
because we kind of had to. It has a bit of a Mobius strip structure to it, and very narrative driven, but very cool film to watch. Very psychologically engaged, and was inspiration for the Silent Hill video game series, which a lot of people are terrified of. And now I understand. Maybe I have to go pick up one of those games.
I think you should.
Because that hospital scene, my God.
Yep, it's bone chilling games, and
we paired it with one of the more underrated Vietnam War films that doesn't get a whole lot of love in that conversation, but it's one of my personal favorites, and that's Casualties of War by Brian De Palma.
That's surprising too, just because I wasn't familiar with it. I knew about it, but I just figured it would be up there with kind of like Apocalypse Now and those kind of
even
things.
Jacob's Ladder isn't hugely in the conversation either. It was kind of interesting talking both, because one was Casualties of War was 1989, Jacob's Ladder 1990. They came out 1 year apart from each other, and they were both very, very unique takes on the Vietnam War film, and they were basically the last Vietnam War films as we kind of know them until they were parodied to death in Tropic Thunder, and I don't think anyone can make one ever again.
It's kind of like the similar thing with Dewey Cox. It's just like, why are you making biopics anymore?
But they're still trying.
Bohemian
still Rhapsody's out here.
Giving it a go.
They're still trying. So that was 2 weeks ago, and it's for free. It's for everyone, wherever podcast listener of choice. So if you haven't heard that episode, go back and check it out. But last week, patrons, you guys would have had a chance to hear from us exclusively over on patreon.com/Sleazoids podcast, where we were talking werewolf movies. We talked An American Werewolf in London, 1981, directed by John Landis. A bit of a really fun horror comedy that Jamie and I had a chance to see on the big screen at the theater that I helped program, which was a lot of fun. Big crowd turnout.
And its balance between comedy and horror is just unbelievul.
Oh, yeah.
It kind of just, instead of like sacrificing one for the other, it just goes full throttle.
It
with
weaves
both
them
of
both together in ways that make you uncomfortable in rewarding ways in retrospect. And then we paired it with 1961, The Curse of the Werewolf, starring Oliver Reed.
Well, at least half the movie.
At least, maybe half the movie.
Like the last quarter.
A movie that kind of defied both of Jamie and I's expectations. It wasn't The Wolfman starring Oliver Reed, really, that we thought. It actually documented the actual curse of the werewolf.
The title was spot on. I just figured it would be more Oliver Reed's curse.
Exactly. But it ended up being sort of an intergenerational document of how sort of like the beastly actions of man kind of get passed down through children and things like that, which was really a cool movie in retrospect. But while watching it, we were like, man, where is our hot, sweaty
Reed?
King, Oliver Reed, fighting people and stuff?
Exactly.
Oliver Reed, obviously from The Devils, which is one of the best films that Jamie and I have sort of discovered for ourselves making this show.
It's kind of like theatric performances are amazing. He's so good at delivering.
Absolutely. So if you haven't heard that episode, again, patreon.com/Sleazoids podcast. That was last week's episode for patrons. But this week, we've brought on a very special guest with us to talk a
couple movies.
Some movies, for sure. One of them.
They technically count.
Yeah. They meet all the technical requirements of motion picture, I suppose.
Yeah. One of them is questionable even in that regard.
But that guest is Donald Borenstein. Did I get that name right, Donald?
Borenstein. But you know what?
Borenstein. You know what? It was 50-50. I was going to... I thought about it, but all right. We got it right. But you might know him better as @Borenstein on Twitter. Donald, how are you doing?
I'm doing quite well. I'm excited to be here. I love the show, and I'm also fresh off of watching one of these movies and still like in the zone for this. So I'm excited.
Nice. You're amped up. All right, Donald. Well, what two films? Let's not keep waiting too long. What two films have you brought with you, and why do they pair together?
So I figured that I wanted to focus on a genre that I don't particularly like too much, which is not just zombie movies and not just video game movies, but video game zombie movies, specifically from the early 2000s. So it's
a very niche genre.
Yeah, I mean, it's a meatier genre than you'd expect, depending on how you want to define it, I guess. 2, maybe even 3 films.
We got 2 of them right here.
Yeah. This is a comprehensive review of the movement. So we have 2002. We have the popular TNT action hit Resident Evil, which is a mainstay of basic cable reruns, but more importantly is one of the more notable video game adaptations because there are people who argue for its merits, and it was also pretty popular at the box office. It was a kind of a big-ish budget kind of thing, that kind of like mid-grade action movie, but still relatively high concept. It's
and I mean, it obviously spawned a franchise which lasted all the way until just last year.
Yeah, they have like 6 movies, something like that.
Yeah, it's like, I mean,
so it was a pretty a mid-budget phenomenon of actually popular movies that people, especially fans of the video game, didn't seem to really like.
Yeah.
Which is funny because it's like very committed to being part of the canon. Like, we'll get into that later because the other movie, which is also in its own way equally committed to expanding on the universe of its video game, arguably, is from a true auteur.
Oh, absolutely.
He the master of if like
something
that's for sure.
He's got something.
Of the best show, a tour of extreme cinema, one might say.
Yes.
But it's
absolutely.
So this is Uwe Boll's The House of the Dead, based on the popular arcade light gun shooting series House of the Dead, which is pretty already notorious for its campiness, to say the least.
Yes.
And into which I have poured so many quarters because there was a machine of it in Rehoboth Beach that only was a quarter per play, so you could just get both guns and just kind of. Anyways, I digress.
Okay, so you're actually familiar with the game, so you can
with both game series as well.
Oh, amazing! Cool. So you'll be able to fill us in on both of those because I have not played either video game at all. Yeah. I'm coming at this solely from a cinematic standpoint.
Nice. I know a little bit of. I played House of the Dead, not all the way through, but I've played it, in the arcade up till when I died and ran out of quarters.
Is there a story in the arcade game? Maybe we should save this for the segment.
Yeah, I mean, House of the Dead's a lot more brief on story than like Resident Evil.
Yeah,
but yeah, we'll get into it. But yeah, I guess we'll bust into Resident Evil. I mean,
yeah,
deep into the lore with these.
Awesome. All right, so we are talking video game zombie movies this week. Paul W.S. Anderson's Resident Evil and Uwe Boll's House of the Dead. So I think we're just going to jump right into it. We're going to talk Resident Evil.
Let's do it.
She isn't standing now.
Is immune. Resident Evil.
You're all going to die down here.
All right, we are talking Resident Evil, the 2002 video game action horror sci-fi everything film, written and directed by Paul W.S. Anderson, a filmmaker we have already actually talked about. You know, when we started the show,
Kombat,
I did not think that we were going to talk Paul W.S. Anderson as many times as we already have.
No kidding.
But I'm surprised no one's brought Event Horizon on here too. Which
Event Horizon,
slaps.
I have planned. I want to do it with John Carpenter's Prince of Darkness is what I'm thinking. Ooh, so we're going to see how that goes. But Event Horizon would be the one because that's actually probably his best movie.
That's what I've heard. Yeah, I haven't seen Event Horizon. No.
Yeah, it's like a space chamber thriller. It's actually funny. It seems like they hired him to make Resident Evil because of Event Horizon, because he takes a lot of sort of similar formal techniques about the sort of claustrophobic corporate chamber thriller and kind of builds it into this.
The kind of technology look of everything.
Yeah,
too, like
and we talked about him previously with Mortal Kombat, which we were actually impressed by because he actually went ham on like the set design and stuff like that. And even that movie has its own faults, maybe as both a video game adaptation and maybe a piece of fighting cinema, we'll say. There is some really interesting idiosyncratic work that he does in that film.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting that he's a very maligned filmmaker and that we're kind of seeing some of his earlier stuff from the 90s and we're kind of like, there's interesting work being done here and maybe a way that a lot of people who hate him really don't acknowledge.
What I think is interesting too is with Mortal Kombat, it seems like he took the video game and he was kind of like, I want to stay as true to the game as possible. We're including settings, characters, moves that they do. Like he went really.
He built a whole prosthetic guy with 6 arms and giant abs.
Like he had Goro. Like like that. Like you didn't think you'd get to see Goro at least as well presented as it is in Mortal Kombat.
Yeah, not in the 90s.
And what I find interesting in this movie, Resident Evil, is that he takes he doesn't go as strong with like. Going with the lore of the actual, game.
Yeah.
Like
I disagree actually. He actually commits a surprising amount of detail. Like there's like some efforts. I mean, like it gets a lot of things wrong about like, the T virus. God, this is a bad start to my appearance getting real granular about Resident Evil.
No, this is good. This is good because you guys have both played them, so I have no fucking clue what you're talking about. So I'd like to know.
It like explicitly tries to tie this into the mythology. I mean, like it doesn't. It sort of fucks it up, I think. But like it tries to. It like sets like basically the ending hook is a hook into the second game, and one of the characters who dies ends up being the origin.
But gamers were really pissed about the game, right? So he must have done some stuff that was quite off base from the game.
Oh yeah. Oh no, yeah. Like a lot of like in general, the way the zombies, like the T virus zombies were and what the T virus was, I guess, kind of. So.
Well, I also think that what I was getting at was the Mortal Kombat. He had like the name, right? Mortal Kombat.
Yeah.
Then you go, you see it. It's the video game. Everything is what it is.
Well, like
Resident Evil, he
hit the reference checklist or whatever. Is that what you're kind of saying?
Yeah, like. But with Mortal Kombat, he's true to everything. Like he's true to the aesthetic, he's true to the setting, he's true to the characters, he's true to everything. Yeah. With this, is what I'm saying is that he's only true to like he uses the T virus, he uses Umbrella Corp, he uses I think maybe certain names and things like that. But I think what people were expecting going into this was the Resident Evil video game, the first one, which is based in a haunted house. And it's based in like more of like cobwebs and secret trapdoors and things like that.
Right.
So I just found it interesting that what he did with this was made it into more like a techno zombie movie, And I at first that kind of, I wasn't too crazy about it just because I really wanted to see the haunted house and all the traps and like I like that stuff a little more than laboratories and stuff.
Yeah.
But then as I rewatched this, I realized he was still doing things like he still had traps, like the laser fence,
the laser
stuff,
thing is
right?
awesome, yeah.
So it's kind of like he took what Resident Evil was doing, how the game was presented, and then he just transferred it over to more of like a technological zombie thing instead of the old school haunted house vibe. But there's still traps, there's still things like that. There's still monsters.
Well, because he still creates I would call it kind of like a cinematic like labyrinth. Like the set design, I think, again, is a thing that Paul W.S. Anderson is really good at.
And that's just like the game.
It's like a labyrinth.
It's very much. The house is huge. You get confused. It's and
it seems like they consistently go deeper and deeper, and every time they go into a new room, like the room doesn't look even remotely like the last room you were in. Like it's like you go from this like giant room filled with these like sort of like dilapidated tankers that are filled with genetic experiments, and it honestly reminds you of the from Alien when they're in the room with the little pods that the goo and the little face huggers fly out of.
For sure.
I mean, and then it kind of self-plagiarized there on the riffing on Alien in 2 consecutive movies, I'd say.
Yeah, exactly, because Event Horizon is also
this one really riffs on Alien though. Like
and
we can get into that later, but like the other thing, but the thing that was interesting to me about this is I ended up kind of, for better and for worse, like echoing what the series would turn into after this too. It became a lot more actiony, a lot more like,
That's true. Yeah.
It like reflected, because this is the weird case where, unlike Mortal Kombat, where it was like trying to make something already popular into a movie, this was like a popular video game that wasn't like huge, and the movie made it bigger in this case. Because it was actually like a pretty big box office hit, I think, if I remember correctly, for its budget.
For sure.
Yeah, it ended up making like $70 or $80 million or something like that, which is like a huge amount of money for these video game movies that frequently bomb. And even the franchise, again, went on to make 6 entries that were all fairly successful as well.
Yeah.
And what's fascinating is that he kind of went even further away from the video games as he went on.
Yeah,
I don't know if you guys have seen the sequels, because I actually
I haven't actually.
Because he's directed pretty much all of them except for I think 1.
The second one, he didn't do the second one apparently.
But the when you get to the 4th and the 5th one, he's just stopped making Resident Evil movies, and he's basically made like his own Matrix franchise with zombies. And it gets really abstract and really like there's this giant bathroom set piece in the 4th one where like there's a giant dude with like a giant scythe, just like it's the laser trap room set piece, but like he's made these giant monsters, and you never explain where that guy came from or who he was. He was just like a piece of the set. And again, he just kind of made a whole franchise out of these sort of bonkers, abstract, weird horror set pieces that kind of don't make any sense from what I understand in
I've heard from people that have really focused on the plotting and stuff, that by the last movie he basically ripped out every bit of plotting that was ever in any movie and just kind of went, it's all changed now, and like none of it really is consistent.
No. He keeps doing like a new plot development, like Matrix style, where like, oh, now she's a superhuman whatever. And
does
she's
he also do the thing where it's like, but did you know that even 20 years ago this actually happened, which now changed the presence that you know now? Which means this first 2 movies weren't even a thing. Like that kind of shit.
And it's all an excuse to like change the location where he gets like a giant like prison sort of area in one of the films, and then in later films it's just full out Matrix sci-fi action, and it's pretty crazy to see that as he got more money, he just ignored the video games more and more and made his own weirdo like Event Horizon action movie franchise. Which honestly I respect it. And I actually like quite a few of them more than you would than other people seem to. But that's also again because I have no affiliation with this branding in any way. I could understand why people who are like, I really love Resident Evil 4. I really wish they would make that a video game. And then they go and watch Resident Evil 4, the movie.
And it is not that.
And it's like, who the fuck?
I think that was the thing that kind of turned me off at first was I was like just expecting a more grounded Resident Evil movie. And what it made me feel like was he was kind of doing a bait and switch at first. I was like, come to my Resident Evil movie. Fuck you. It's not a Resident Evil movie. That kind
it's
of
actually a psychotic AI thriller.
Yeah, exactly. So that kind of, left a sour taste in my mouth. But, this rewatch really did kind of solidify kind of what you were saying in sense of just like, it's a well done sci-fi horror movie with a lot of interesting ideas with its like entrapment moments and things like that. Like the fence scene is one of the best. I actually found that to be incredibly intense.
And speaking of which, he's actually riffing on horror ideas in a way that, say, a John Carpenter or a Romero would, with this idea of sort of privatization and militarization and kind of how it's its own sort of entrapping horror mechanism.
It's a pretty it's a pretty like gigantic, you know, amalgamation of like so many different, you know, horror tropes. Almost like it's like a little over the. It's like a little. It's to the point of almost being like, okay, chill out a bit. But like, you know, everything from, you know, the Romero riffs to like, you know, feeling like Alien to just the way around. It just feels like
a little bit of The Thing too.
Yeah, there's the thing with, you know, the infection, you know, when are they going to turn?
Yeah, and the group under duress and like distrustful, and people sort of like, I do like that he kind of put a bit of a Bourne Identity thriller into it too, where people are like trying to remember who they are and how they got there, and he kind of merges it into the corporation aspect, where it's like the company, one of the main character played by Paul W. Sanderson's wife, who he very clearly loves and wants to show you every part of her. Mila Jovovich, but she wants to sort of overthrow the company which is performing this illegal genetic experimentation. But at the beginning of the film, she has her memory wiped, and they've kind of stolen her agency from her and her individuality from her to make her sort of go along with this plan that they have.
Yeah.
And it's just, you know, it's really interesting to set up the Umbrella Corp, obviously, as this thing that's just this very dominating company. I think they said it's a product of it is in 9 in every 10 homes. It develops computer technology, healthcare.
Amazon.
One of my favorite things was that it was like it's the number one for healthcare, but also the number one for military.
Yeah, military and genetic experimentation.
We're for destruction and keeping life. You know.
Yeah, well, because it was like unknown to the public that most of its profits come from military development and genetic experimentation and viral weaponry specifically and things like this. And that's obviously what kind of sparks the whole thing, is that in a really actually pretty evocative opening sequence, which I was surprised at how just genuine horror it is. Is
really upsetting, actually.
Yeah, the T virus breaking out, and all of the sort of lab workers, and even, you know, from the actual scientists to just sort of like the coffee carriers are completely killed from the point of view. And I think Anderson does a really good job of using his camera to establish a kind of like disaffected like presence, a corporate presence. Like the building itself is its own AI presence, who starts like murdering everyone in the building.
Right. A lot of the shots are based out of like an actual security camera or something that's in the room with them. And
even the opening shot, it's looking at a guy who's performing work on the virus, but it kind of sort of it looks like it's dollying through a giant like void towards the shot. So it's kind of like it's showing you that these people are in a box that this thing has control over. And it's kind of watching you in this box, and it's seeing what you're doing, and at any time it can pull the plug on you.
Right. I was going to say, like, it also makes the decision on, you know, it's like, oh, T-virus is out. We have a lockdown, and all of you die. That's just it. There's no, can we get a couple people out? Can whatever. It's just the AI system has it set up, so it's like, well, it's locked. Lock it up. Kill them all.
It is like real, genuine horror, and I think also that the choice to kind of make it, you know, lots of sort of empty metallic hallways and corridors, and sort of like concrete and lasers and this like really garish fluorescent lighting, like really hammers home the look of this sort of corporate world in a way, and how sort of like antiseptic it is almost in a way. And it's just soulless in its own way, and
cold.
And
it's a very cold movie in general, but like it just really there is something that feels like it actually, I was really impressed with how well it conveys, like, I guess, like how this kind of nightmarish, you know, experimentation work can just be dressed up in this sort of corporate drab colors, you know, as like a day job almost.
Yeah. All these people are just kind of having, going to the office and such, and meanwhile they
you
are
spilled my coffee and all that.
Oh, I spilled the virus. Oh shit.
Which one thing I do love about this movie, and it's like it's an element of this movie that's actively bad. It's like the all the voice delivery. At first, like I was like unsure, like is he doing a thing where it's like he's riffing on the fact that these games have notoriously bad voice acting?
That's very true.
Like from everything from like that notorious clip of like the I'm the master of unlocking, or it's like but like, and I was like I'm convinced after the whole movie, like, and how it sustained itself and like the specific like woodenness is, I kind of think that was like purposeful direction to like, let's make it sound exactly like that. It is
unnatural.
A very funny and like outright antagonistic decision that I gotta respect.
Well, for me, the weakest part is when it turns into action. When it becomes an action movie.
Sure.
When all of a sudden it drops the horror and it has like Mila Jovovich like bullet time, jump in the air and like kick a dog. And it's stuff that I like.
Yeah, I still enjoyed it.
It's just for me it's the weakest stuff, and it's the stuff that is dated the most quickly. I would have loved it to be more
based in like the traps and more things like that, where it's like the AI is almost trying to have zombies. It's a Resident Evil movie. You got to do that.
Well, just think of the difference between like Mila Jovovich like jumping in the air and kicking the zombie dog versus like the set piece with the lasers, which is just like a genuine horror set piece.
It's tense.
Oh my god! Are we allowed to spoil things in this movie?
Yeah, go ahead.
Absolutely.
Okay, so just that the laser set piece. It's clear where the budgetary limitations were on it, but like it was just genuinely horrifying. Just watching these like slowly escalating series of these people getting sliced up, and then like literally it's like a series of cubes for the last guy. Like, it was,
well, and
I thought it was pretty well done.
Well,
like the CGI later on's a little wonky.
Yeah,
but this scene was particularly really good.
He very strategically films it in a way where he doesn't show you his limitations.
Until
he really shows you his limitations with the giant genetic creatures, and you're like,
you're like, damn, bro.
But like the laser set piece, in the same way that girl who gets her head crushed in the elevator. Which is a really horrifying. Just the way that he shoots and edits it, and the way that he has an actual sense of, this is what I think we're going to get into a lot when we get into House of the Dead, because House of the Dead has action sort of set pieces too, and the difference is that Anderson has a sense of timing and visual construction. So like you actually do get a suspense out of, oh shit, the wires come below, it got his legs, and then the one guy,
you can understand step by step.
Well, and you can understand the logic of both the visual construction of the scene and the character decisions. So when it starts coming again and the guy goes to jump over it, and then it moves up into the middle and slices him in half. It's like you feel that you're like, oh, dude, he jumped.
Like
that's cheating, man.
He did what he was supposed to do. I played video games.
You
can't just change the line.
which is now I'm like, hearing you say that out loud, like I really like that twist on the video game logic there. That's really. And like he's proven like this is something he thinks through. Like, this is not I think supplanting motive onto something that was just whatever.
Like he actually does care about visual construction and how the set pieces end up working, and especially it's really sad when the guy who is obviously the best and even gets over the really really high laser line that's coming across the sort of like mirror light hallway, which is obviously it's a gorgeous set too. He grabs onto the roof,
his knife gets sliced,
and then the last one comes up and it does the sort of like fishnet style.
And then you're like, and I love how it's like, okay, I got it, and then it changes into the fishnet thing, and he just goes,
fuck,
or fuck, like he kind of accepts like the death coming now. It's horrifying, but that timing actually does have a little bit of comedic edge to it.
And we got to talk a little bit about the music. The very like techno nu metal. This is a time period, and I do think that if
it's just riddled with it.
I think if this movie, it's such a time capsule for the early 2000s. But I think if this movie was made in any other time period, people would respect it a little bit more.
No, it would. I think like a lot of what's hangups are simply the early 2000s aesthetic, which is a nightmare.
Exactly. Like I just went on.
It is the worst period. From like the 1997 to like 2006. It's like aesthetically the worst period in the history of time.
100% agree.
Right there with you. I just went on another podcast and talked about Bride of Chucky, which was I think 2002 or 2003. And the one note I had about it, because I watched all the Chucky films or the Child's Play films leading up to Bride of Chucky, is that they're a lot of fun, and you can see, but you can see the aesthetic difference happen because those movies came out over the 90s to the early 2000s. And if you look at Child's Play 1989 and you look at Bride of Chucky, you will see what the 90s did to people in terms of music sense, in terms of fashion sense, in terms of what aesthetic was visually pleasing, in terms of camera work,
how that transfers over to filmmaking.
Yeah, and I think that like it is just hands down one of the like most garish periods. And the most ghastly looking. They had no visual sensibility of any kind.
This is what happens when you get rid of the Soviet Union.
Yeah. You know? They were just like,
should have kept them going.
Like, you know, now you just let them be dumb. You know, this is what the free market creates.
Yeah, this is what freedom gets you.
Yeah. You really went for it, guys. But I gotta say, when they also move in, because it also affected the music. This is all techno and like early nu metal stuff that's happening in this too.
Yeah. It's all like
it's all
fused
together too.
You know the what's it called, lasagna cat videos on YouTube?
I think so.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh my, they're one of my favorite things. I could do an entire discussion of that for like hours. I consider them to be like genuine art. Anyways, though, they're like it's the whole conceit of these videos is like it's like recreations of Garfield strips and Bizarroids. One of them is like all slow motion action kicking, set to like I think like Firestarter. Is that the Chemical Brothers?
Oh,
I guess. Yeah, something like that. These are all like soundtracks where like they couldn't afford to get the Chemical Brothers or Fatboy Slim, so they had like some kind of like they found someone on Craigslist or whatever to make like like techno. I guess this was actually probably a unionized job, so they paid someone a proper wage to make knockoff techno. And
well, and that's just it. Is that
good for them? Yeah,
like when all of a sudden this moves from like this horror of privatization and these very antiseptic locations and concretes and lasers and all of and monitors and things like this, and it's genuinely horrifying. And even the zombies look pretty good. I kind of wish there was more blood when they were shooting them and stuff, but again, he still finds ways to get around that and get some of the images, like when they go into the even further into the hive, and it's kind of like a weird sewer that's filled with all of these zombies and stuff like that too, and all the hands reaching out. Like he does good with his references on previous zombie films and previous horror films, and actually using them for his own purpose. But again, as soon as the nu metal comes in, and Mila Jovovich is like doing bullet time with and like the this is always shortly after The Matrix came out and made that such a huge thing.
Made it a requirement to make an action
which
film.
we'll later also see in Yui Bull. Just loves it.
Yeah, we will.
Well, and here's the thing about that is it's very clear to me that House of the Dead was greenlit on Resident Evil's popularity.
Yeah.
House of the Dead was clearly shot, edited, and released in the span between Resident Evil's trailer coming out and its release date.
Yeah,
it was a rush job. I am near certain.
For sure.
I'll pull up the IMDb on that once we switch gears to make that's true.
One thing I do like what they did with kind of the sewer scene too is they did a lot. He did a lot of kind of bait and switch where you think that a bunch of characters die from the horde and then they show up again, and then he has a lot of that actually a couple times where he kind of sets it up like, oh, they just died, and then he sets it up where it hasn't happened. And most of the time that can kind of piss me off a little bit depending on how he edits it.
Like,
but
stop
he did
teasing
it well.
me, bitch.
Yeah, exactly. But he did it really well and made me kind of genuinely care about the characters.
And here's where I'm going to digress from it. I don't think the action is as bad as I expected.
Oh no,
I'll agree with that.
Oh yeah,
I think he's still got such a good eye that even though it feels very forced in, it's like enjoyable. You know?
It's just I think that stuff has just dated more quickly than anything else in the movie.
Oh
For sure. Oh yeah.
Even though it's not a big deal for me,
as like a campy enjoyment.
Yeah,
which is like which is what most of this movie is. Like, it is a very fun campy action film, which is a perfectly good and legitimate film to make.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And just the fact that, even just having a minor, having someone who at least minorly cares in the space and the movement of the camera, and like it shows so much, and it makes your movie last so much longer when you just have someone who actually gives a shit about that stuff. Or even again, some of the set design. I love the bit when they're walking through the lab after we saw the carnage of the lab, but we didn't actually get to see the aftermath of it. And they're walking through, and all the labs are filled with like this piss yellow water, and they have corpses floating around in them and stuff like that from the people that you just saw. So and again, it's just like they look like these giant yellow tubes. It reminded me of actually the Black Cat. Remember that 30s horror one that we did where the guy keeps the woman's bodies in the glass cabinets and stuff like that? Yeah. Like that's kind of what it reminded me of. And I mean, the fact that it even reminded me of that.
Yeah, good job.
Yeah. No, it's got some legitimately great things. It's also got some very clunky things, I think, in its effort to... I think, well-placed effort to emulate the feel of the video games. Like, a lot of it's like feels like setting up missions. Like you have those like, very bad CGI maps and heads-up displays that like they're cool for conveying information. But oh my god,
like you're playing Call of Duty, like the opening menu.
You can't take it seriously. Like there's like it's like one. It's like one. One bit like in the intro where it's like it's identifying all these people through like facial scans, and it's like wow, it is like it's like the mechanics of a video game. Yes, I guess more Metroid Prime than Resident Evil, but like it's like I get what it's going for. It just doesn't work though. It's just real goofy, which I love, but like it doesn't make it good. It's
that's the thing. It's like a lot of not a lot of it, but I would say like I don't know. Half of it comes off a little like goofy, and I don't know if that's his intent. So I think that's kind of where it gets a little wonky for me.
Well, and see, for me, it's hard to tell whether that's his fault or whether that's the 2000s, like everything from that wasn't like specifically not doing the house style of whatever that time period was. Just being awful, like the metallic lighting and like
it's just bone chilling.
Yeah,
that itself is horrifying. It's more horrifying than the actual horror.
It's enough of like a sudden shift that I wouldn't be surprised if like some of it was notes. I don't know, but like it's
it's just amazing to see a scene that like reminds you of all of the worst of that, and then to see like this very like symmetrically framed like really well lit like corridor and chamber and stuff like that he's sort of trained you to know that the corporate presence is watching you while you're moving through it. So like, there's a lot of stuff that he builds that's really, really well done. And then you see, a bit that is so dated that you're like, oh no.
You're like, damn it. You're close, Wes.
So close.
Oh man.
I think we might angle towards the reductive rating round on this one. But
should we, just before we do, I think you were mentioning it, Donald. It was at the end, they do a slight reference to setting up for like Resident Evil 2, I believe, getting into Raccoon City.
Yeah, the game Resident Evil 2. It seems like it's set like in a legitimately also horrific ending, I have to say. Like when you have Mila Jovovich,
where they finally escape back up to the house.
They escape from the house, and like and she's trying to get the vaccination ready for the other guy who ends up but they get detained by Umbrella. The other guy gets taken off to become the nemesis. That'll be like a villain in the third game.
Yeah.
And like like a terrifying super soldier or whatever.
Which, by the way, they do that in the second movie. If you haven't seen the second movie,
he's like the big purple weird big guy, right?
Yeah,
which actually is canonical because like the second and third movie happen at the same time.
He looks like a monster from a Gears of War game.
Yeah.
Where he's just like really, really massive, and you're just kind of like, I don't know, that body type doesn't make sense.
It's like, where did you come from?
Yeah.
Who are you as a human?
Where are you working out? Tell me about it.
Yeah.
What's your routine, bro?
He wasn't that ripped. Like he's kind of like a Beto O'Rourke looking guy, It's
just like big motherfucker, that kind of thing.
Tall.
Yeah. Like he's just like he's just like kind of like a interchangeable guy who failed out of playing in a punk band and decided to
that's something I found interesting at the end was that Wes was kind of like, all right, now let's wrap up a few things and throw some references from the video game at you guys, because I forgot to do that my first hour and 15 minutes of my movie.
But the good part of it is when you Mila, it's a little like having her be like naked's a little like exploitative, but like waking up in this like hospital facility like with tubes coming out of her.
Yeah,
and, like,
I agree, but I also felt like it was kind of very vulnerable for her. Like it was like she was put in that situation by the people, the corporation.
Oh yeah, exactly.
And it was shot like that. Like I felt really like bad, like she was frail and like think, you know. So
shot like that's the thing. Like it's like I think we were like making fun of the fact that her introduction is a pretty gross shot, honestly.
Yeah.
Other than that,
I don't know if they were married before this movie started, or if he fell in love with her while shooting the movie.
Yeah,
it's hard to tell.
I
get it though, Paul. I understand. But I also love that shot also repeats the opening shot where it sort of zooms out of the sort of shot where it looks like the guy experimenting in the lab is in like this little box that like Paul W.S. Anderson himself has put him into. Yeah. It sort of moves back and reveals the sort of two-sided mirror that they're watching her from.
That's a good point.
Sort of establishing that sort of like disaffected corporate presence once again, just at the finale before she obviously makes her way out, because it sounds like again they must have fucked up in that laboratory because no one's there. Yeah, and it's made its way outside, so there's no one to stop her from making her way outside.
Yep.
Picks up a shotgun.
Cocks it and she's ready to go.
We're ready to go.
Techno music or something. Credits.
Yeah, so let's enter the reductive rating round. But this is also the part where it's also closing statements. So if you have any other last points you want to make or scenes that you want to address, this is the part to do it. For me, this is pretty damn high 3. I
3 out of 5, by the way, Donald.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I've been pretty close to 4ing this almost every time I've watched it, just because I really want to.
Yeah,
there's so much stuff that I like about it, and so much stuff.
It's like you see the things he could have done to get you to that 4.
Yeah, and I see that there's so much that's actually successful in it, but also I'm like, a lot of this is also from Event Horizon, which doesn't have any of the bad stuff that or the stuff that I think is more
and has Sam Neill.
And has Sam Neill, so but this has Michelle Rodriguez, so it's true. Yeah. There's a compromise.
She's great in this.
Yeah, she's great. It's funny. Michelle Rodriguez seems to like act with her eyes up all the time. Yeah. Like she's trying to do the Deadeye thing from The Undertaker.
Yeah.
She's great, but I have always noticed that in like everything she's done.
Yeah.
She's such a badass.
But when this isn't being a kind of sort of like dated action sci-fi thing that's very clearly, inspired by negatively in the way that only The Matrix could have inspired everybody. When it's not doing that, it's like a really well visually constructed, very suspenseful, good use of tension and escalating set pieces using video game logic well. And it's about a hyper corporate hellscape / labyrinth of just death traps. It's kind of like Saw a little bit, but very specifically about privatization and militarization, and how those sort of institutions can remove your own agency and memories and use you and abuse you. So for me, I honestly got the most out of this when there was like just a steady dolly shot moving through a sort of like blue glowing elevator, like in that opening scene, or and again, I think that it takes a lot of skill and a lot of effort to really get you terrified of something as simple as a metallic corridor, because he's established for your own brain that there is this weird disaffected corporate presence that's watching you, and at any moment could activate a death trap on you for disobeying it. and that just really gets under my skin personally. So it's really well done in that aspect, and that is quite a lot of the movie, and it only really suffers for me when we get into like the giant genetic creature like roaming around, and then there's like a shot on the TV of him like staring into the camera doing like the Venom face, and I'm like, I don't know that I needed this part, even though I do also get my own sort of campy enjoyment out of it.
Yeah, definitely.
2000 CG, man, you gotta love it.
It's the best. I'm gonna give it a 3 as well. This is coming from like a 2 to a 3, which is cool.
Yeah, because you upgraded. Because last time you watched it.
I wanted I still do kind of want the haunted house. I would like the soldiers still.
You want like a more faithful Resident Evil haunted house adaptation.
And although. But that being said, now that I go back into this and I see what he was doing, he still kind of has like the trap set up. He still has that kind of this overlooking mystery that you don't quite know what's going on, but there's a bigger picture to everything.
It's an identity thriller, yeah.
Right, and so that aspect I really enjoyed, and there's still a lot of enjoyment to be had out of some of the horror. Once again, the laser fence scene is fantastic. It's very tense, very well done. And even the CGI is pretty good.
I love that set too, with the mirror hallways on both sides with the like weird lighting and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm glad to be able to say I did like it more this time, and I'm going to give it a 3 this time.
For you, Donald.
Yeah. I think I'm with both of y'all on this. Like, I'm giving it a high 3 as well, I think.
Nice.
It's for me, like, I think the thing that I more than anything, aside from all the, the idea, it's like, it's of all its reference points, it also, I think, passes the smell test of like being exactly what it wants to be, which is just a solid, action movie to have on in the background as you smoke weed and eat cereal, which is exactly what I did this morning.
Absolutely.
Said, sir. It was, and I think it's broadly, and it was like, I think it does a good job of like conveying its world, as like something like, very leanly. Like, I think if this came out like, 10 years later with effectively most of the same parts and just like swap out the parts that were done by separate units, basically, like, graphics and everything like that, it would have been like much more warmly received, I think, because, it's like, it's very lean in the way like something like The Raid is lean. It like, there is like no time wasted on anything but going forward with this. And it's, I think there's a greater appreciation for that. And again, it is this like weird dual thing where like some of it's legitimately good filmmaking and some of it's very campy. And that's kind of like, so it's kind of weird to find a film that fits both of those appetites at once, actually.
Yeah, because we're about to move on to, let's say, campy with
absolute masterwork,
with absolutely incomprehensible filmmaking.
That's truly part of the film watching is just like watching the decisions being made by Uwe Boll and asking yourself, why?
I gotta say, as someone who studied editing, like I got hives watching the movie.
As someone who like allegedly is a professional at this, I mean, the jury's very out on that. But it's really. I gotta respect it in the sense that he did not give a shit what anyone else thought or said to him at any time.
Absolutely.
There was definitely a professional on set that was like, "You sure you want to shoot it like that?"
It's like, you're goddamn right I do.
I guarantee you Clint Howard was like walking up from there and like being like, "Are you sure you want to frame it like this, buddy?" Like Ronnie's like, I don't think he'd do it this way.
Oh man, we're already getting into it. We should.
All right. So that was
the Dead.
That was 3 across the board for Resident Evil from all of us. But again, I think that movie actually is pretty critically reviled. So I was a little shocked about that.
That's why I pulled the Rotten Tomatoes for it.
What was it?
34%. It absolutely just gets.
Yeah, that's low.
Pale read. Although it's got a solid like 67 in terms of audience liking it. Which I think.
I found that it has like a really strong cult following. I have found that.
Yeah, well, because
I know a couple of my buddies really like it.
Honestly, what I think that is it was an initial people reviled it for a lot of those reasons.
Yeah.
And I think, again, it's just Anderson actually is a decent filmmaker.
Yeah.
And like that stuff sometimes does stand the test of time.
Yeah.
You watch something later and you're just like, man, you actually see that someone put effort into the camera work and into the sets. So
comes down to reference point too. I mean, like, I guess for us, there has to be the admitted bias of drawing on this as a point of cultural awareness.
Yeah.
Right. Even if you're not like, like super aware of, like I watched with my girlfriend had like she like was aware of them and she's like familiar with. I think our generation is a lot more was sort of like already sort of ready for like this kind of thing, and like I guess for older critics it might have like I know this sounds like the dumbest like, oh, the oldies don't get it, but like I just think it's like a different like frame of mind approaching this, like because the logic is like very much structured like a video game. It just seems much more incoherent to someone who isn't used to that logic, like that structure, which is admittedly very, esoteric.
Well, if you ever get into the sequels, I can recommend especially 4 and 5, and even for its own reasons, 3, which is not directed by Paul W.S. Anderson, but Jamie, you'll be glad to hear this.
Oh.
It was directed by Russell Mulcahy, the guy who we talked about who did, what was that movie about the giant boar? the Australian Outback movie.
Yeah. Oh man, I can't even think about it.
For some
now.
reason, I can't remember the title. I'm gonna get it here in 2 seconds.
Razorback.
And he also did Highlander.
Oh, okay.
So
I'd be into that.
So like an 80s trash Australian filmmaker took over Resident Evil 3, and he kind of made like his own like Mad Max out of it. And believe it or not, I like it more than like Thunderdome.
Oh, shit. I would love. I'm gonna watch that.
Watch that. Yeah.
Yeah. So they get pretty interesting as they get into the sequels, and they basically divorce themselves even more from the video game, and it just let me able to push that even further to the side.
Yeah.
And just get into the visual abstraction that W.S. Anderson was interested in, especially as they increasingly gave him bigger budgets. Like I think eventually he was at $60 and $80 million budgets, and you're just like, and it looks better.
That's good.
So there you go. But I think that'll wrap it up for Resident Evil. We're going to be right back, and we're going to be talking Uwe Boll's House of the Dead.
I'm excited.
Oh, beautiful.
Let's do it.
Is that you, Matt?
Now, the only way to make it back alive is to send them all back to the House of the Dead. I've been waiting for you for a long time.
Definitely.
There were a couple lines in here that did that for me, though.
Lines in here?
There's a couple line readings in here that like blew my mind. Like the one guy is like, who's the guy with the Tom Cruise smile and the Rain Man brain?
Wait.
And then the girl's like, that's actually the #1 underwear model in America. And then his response is, oh, congratulations. And I was like, somebody wrote that. Like, are you what? Yeah. And that's the end of that conversation.
Are we in it? Should we just go?
Oh yeah, are we like,
yeah, we're in it.
We're in it.
We're talking House of the Dead. 2003, 1 year after Resident Evil, very clearly greenlit off the success of Resident Evil at the box office, or the sort of near success, that the hype that it gathered around its trailer, maybe.
Yeah.
Because it came out very quickly, but who knows? Maybe he shot this in a week. It's you can't tell.
Well, I'll consult IMDb on that later. My guess is like maybe 2 to 3 weeks at most.
Oh yeah, 100%.
But this is directed by the legendary Uwe Boll, a German director who came over to America to write and produce all kinds of video game, horror and action schlock direct-to-video style that.
Where did you say
that were? Well,
himself.
They were actually more. He didn't come over here initially because they were mostly made in Europe at first. Because his films infamously were like basically a tax scam.
Oh really?
Shit. Even better.
Oh, you didn't know this part?
No.
Give it to us.
Give us the history.
So
this is my first Uwe Boll film.
One.
Yeah, me too.
So oh my god, Uwe Boll is a lot. So
he started out making German films first.
He started making German films, like using arts funding that he what's it called, basically supplemented like small amounts of his own funding with like giant like matching funding from German arts funding, which is like a good, to be clear, an objectively good thing. And it could be argued that maybe or maybe not he was just trying to take advantage of it for a quick cash turnaround, producer style, or not. Or maybe this really truly is his vision and version of directing.
I like to think it is.
But here's the thing. I now just think he is a truly delusional person, because they exist, and oh man, they're visionaries. And Uwe Boll, say what you will about his films, and say what you will about the fact that that the German government finally closed the loopholes in the tax laws that allowed him to make these films in 2006. And then he immediately switched over to crowdfunding all of his films.
Oh man, I like this guy. There's something about like just pushing forward and keep going no matter what that I respect, even if it's utter garbage. And maybe if the initial thought was to, evade taxes, but he still kept going. So, I mean, there must have been some passion.
He got paid, and he didn't really care about the quality of the movie as long as he got paid.
And I'm sure he likes what he made. Because like he so consistently does it and does not care that I think he must earnestly enjoy the films he makes, and good for him, I guess.
Well, he got to make one with Jason Statham, right? So there,
and it had like a $60 million budget, I think.
Holy shit,
or something like that. I was shocked. I gotta watch it. Like I'm like, you gave Yui Bowl like $50 million. That's gonna be art. It's gonna be art.
I mean, he's like the neckbeard version of like, you know, Tommy Wiseau, basically. You know?
yeah.
Nailed it. Well, House of the
anyways,
Dead.
Here's his movie.
yeah.
So it's set on an island.
Yeah.
Off some sort of coast of somewhere.
Yeah.
Where there's a Sega sponsored techno rave party happening.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That a bunch of college kids want to go to. And the movie starts with the I bet you're wondering how I got here kind of like voiceover a little bit. And
I also love how he starts by saying everybody dies.
Yeah.
He just tells you straight up. He's like, by the way, every character you're about to see, they're gonna die by the end.
But
let's take away that tension.
It's also that classic like film school narration where like someone watched like a Scorsese Goodfellas type thing when they have narration and they were like, I can write narration, and then the inner thoughts of this guy are just like, man, it all started when I went to this fucking rave, dude.
Right. Like it's like some guy falling or crashing, and then it pauses, and they go, "You're probably wondering why I got here or how I got here."
But even the way that the guy like delivers the narration, it's always like, "That's Alicia. She's my ex, but she's into him, but I'm into her."
Yeah,
and
like he's actually trying to be cool in a way.
It's
like
weird.
Have some style. Like, oh, I know.
It's really truly a shame they could not get any Baldwins for this movie because they're a perfect fit.
Oh,
for
dude,
it.
Billy Baldwin would have nailed it.
Oh my god,
would have nailed it. And even the freeze frames that go into like a sepia tone and stuff like that.
Yeah. Are you talking about the death scenes where they literally have spinning character models that die?
No.
That's incredible.
Yeah. That's incredible. No, but my favorite aesthetic, I mean, whereas Resident Evil, I guess, tried somewhat to integrate the video game into it, you know, Uwe Boll decided to make the subtext text by
he literally just puts the video game
random stills and like small motion like videos from the arcade game, not just when there are like deaths and attacks, but just like as random interstitials sprinkled between scenes. Like,
I don't know how he also transitions. Yeah, exactly.
I was gonna say it's how he transitions
like
into next
at the opening
scenes.
of the film. Like in the opening, like when they're on their way to the island, they're like on this ship where they've like avoided the police to go to this for like a routine inspection, so the guy from Das Boot can drive and Clint Howard can drive them to this island. That was a sentence. Anyways, they
also
it just cuts from like a generic like establishing shot of that to like 3 seconds of like a video game zombie lumbering and like that like screeching bite sound, and then like just people talking.
Yeah.
Well, and he tries to use them as like the ominous like locals telling them about death, and then the one dude's just like, that's Spanish for death, by the way, in case you don't speak Mexican or whatever. And you're just like, who wrote this movie?
Yeah. It should be noted that
it wasn't.
Uwe Boll is like repugnant. Is worth noting. Like he's this movie like is like really leering and gross in so many ways.
Oh yeah, like they have that scene with the blonde and she's topless because
the guy who got sick and vomited on her.
But the fact that she's just having a normal conversation with this stranger while she's topless and completely just like, oh, what, you want a better look? It's just like really cheesy, like almost porn shit. It's almost porn dialogue at times.
And even sub porn dialogue. When they actually
porn is more coherent, you know.
What's that?
Porn is more coherent. It has a basic story structure.
Oh yeah. Well, I was gonna say it gets even more incoherent than porn when they get into actual sexual relations. When the one guy they go into the tent,
there's more romance than hardcore porn.
Yeah. No. I'm convinced he was like kissing her belly button.
Yeah,
it was like it looked like he was trying to go down on her, but he was like kissing her belly button.
Yeah, well, and the line of dialogue that he says when he takes her into the tent is, "We're gonna do the humpity bumpity, baby."
That's the thing. This movie is like, I don't know whether it's trying to be funny or if it thinks it's cool. You know what I mean? Like, does he think that line is like smooth and suave and whatever, or does he understand the irony in it? Like, it's bizarre. The tone is just insane. Yeah, you can't tell.
I would be convinced it was irony for a while, and then all of a sudden, like, you have anything resembling action. It's like, oh man, no, this dude loves this.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like it's absolutely mind blowing to hear some of the dialogue and the way that he, films the character. It legitimately feels like he thinks he's making the most badass James Bond like action hero right now. Which is
funny because like Resident Evil, but maybe less intentionally, it's kind of a slow burn.
Yeah, it takes a while.
You're right. It takes like 45 minutes for the action to really kind of start going.
Yeah, there's a lot of character, we'll say. I got quotes doing there. I don't know if my voice made that clear or not.
Like he definitely has taken a screenwriting course at some point.
I had insane film school flashbacks. Like it's like first time filmmaker dialogue of like people talking to each other, but like
that was apparent to me, and I went to school for music.
Well, yeah,
so.
I went to school for environmental policy.
we can all tell you.
Well, because it's
you must have been having like an aneurysm.
Well, yeah, because it's that first time where someone realizes that the things that they've written on the page don't work when actors say them out loud.
Right.
It's the first, and you never, no matter how good you end up being, your first film always ends up sounding like that because you don't know until you finally actually direct a performance and you realize that the performance you thought you were directing on set does not work on screen. Mm-hmm. And this whole movie is made up of those performances all the time, and scenes like that where people just walk into a room and they're like, all right, what are we doing next? And instead it'll happen right after like someone's best friend died. And they're just like, was that our best friend? And they're like, not anymore. And then they're like, all right, what are we doing next? Like there's no time for the pain of that.
Yeah, it feels like no one really understands who they are.
One of my favorite moments of this entire movie, to jump ahead a bit in the chronology of it, when eventually there's the inevitable fights, and oh boy, is there a fight. But it's like at one point the police officer who like end up catching up to them and accompanies them dies in one of the only like legitimately like, this is actually at least a little thought went into this moment of the film where like she's like basically her legs are torn off, which is over the top, but like it's legitimately horrifying. Mm-hmm. And like she has like I won't say a tender, well scripted moment with the other guy there as she dies, but like it's at least not as bad as everything else going on. Yeah, it cuts away from that. You think that's done. And he goes back to a little bit more and then it goes like right back to a bit more fighting. But then after like 30 seconds, it cuts right back to that scene of the guy with her just having died in exactly the same place. And he like casually throws a blanket onto like her like stub version of a corpse, like with like no legs or arms on it. And like just like says, okay, and walks away. And it's like, like just chill as can be. And like, it's like, okay, that's.
Yeah, no character interactions make sense outside of the second that they're happening in. Yeah. Where like you understand what he's getting at because it's a cliche moment, and you've seen it in other movies where these two people have this interaction. But there's even one when they first see that the boat that they mean to take back is overrun with zombies, and the one dude just jumps into the water, and I was like, first of all, dude, what are you going to do to them? Like he just jumped into the water, and all the zombies, I love that none of these zombies act like zombies. Like they're just people in zombie makeup.
They're just running. And
so they like jump off of the boat into the water, and your brain automatically goes, of course, the zombies are just going to jump into the water and eat him. But the girl that he just met, these people who were at the rave before, because these college kids show up late to the rave and the zombies outbreak has already happened. And they meet three people who have survived the rave inside the House of the Dead or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And one of the girls who was just at the rave, who met that guy literally 30 seconds earlier, runs over and goes, Simon, why? Like, don't jump in there. And I'm like, you literally haven't even spoken to each other in this movie. And like she's freaking out as if that's like her longtime best friend who's about to die because of a stupid decision he just made. And then everyone just starts unloading guns into the water even though he's in there. And you're kind of like, you're gonna shoot him too. And
I think this is my favorite moment of the entire film, and it relates to like watching these other characters die and having a character react. It's when I believe it's the Asian women with the American bodysuit on, American flag bodysuit,
Liberty,
and
Liberty.
She dies, and then it cuts to the guy who I think is with her, like he's dating her or something, and he watches her die, and then it goes into his like eye and into his brain or whatever, and then does that really fast cutting of like everything that's happened in the movie, and then it cuts back into his like back to his actual face.
Yeah.
And there's techno music going on, and it's pounding you into like it's so aggressive, and it's trying to, I think it was Yui Bull's like attempt at getting inside this guy's brain and showing his mind shatter. And instead it just comes off as this insanely convoluted and overly aggressive techno montage of nonsense.
It's the world's worst PowerPoint.
Yeah, exactly. But it literally melted my brain. Like it was just the funniest shit ever for me.
No, for me, and that's like right in the middle of the fight scene that lasts like 11 minutes. Yeah. And it's like, wait, first off, if you're listening to this episode, I implore you, if you can, pause this, just go on YouTube and look up the House of the Dead cemetery fight scene in its entirety.
Yes.
Words cannot do it justice.
No, it goes on for so long.
And it's filmed so like lovingly. It's not good, but he loves what he's doing.
Oh my God. Dude, no one has ever been more excited to have a bullet time set up in human history.
Well, and also, I don't know
I've never seen more mundane mid-combat action in bullet time until you've seen this. It's like we're not talking like a quarter circle or a half circle. We're talking like a circle and a half.
Yeah, he'll do like 720 degrees, not just 360. He'll go around 2 times.
Yeah, and he can't figure out more than like one move for each character to do. So it's just them doing the same move over and over again to like a different zombie.
And then this is where he incorporates the character death, which is where he has a character model, and then it 360s around them. And then there's a red screen that comes up to signify that they're dead, just like in a video game.
Yeah,
it's so funny.
Yeah, like GoldenEye, right? Yeah. Like when the blood comes on the screen.
It's kind of charming in a way. Yeah.
In its own way, just as like Resident Evil was committed to like actually getting the feel of a video game in a cool way and like a really interesting way, this one was more like, it for significantly worse.
Yeah.
It is like note for note hitting like the feel of an arcade game story. The part of an arcade game you really do not want to sit through at all.
Right.
Like
it's almost like
the House of the Dead is like the story elements are like after the first one, it's like knowingly self-consciously bad. But like it's like, the second one was famously, it kind of rules. Adopt into Typing of the Dead, which is like a typing game as a zombie light rail shooter. It fucking rules. You can, it's not like available for purchase anymore. So you can find it on like eBay or like, whatever your means of choice is after that. It's a lot. It's actually kind of fun if you like need to get your words per minute up. It's actually kind of helping with it. Nice. I played a lot of it. It's really campy, and like this is too, but it's in such a confounding way. It does not possibly seem as self-aware as it would need to get away with.
That's what I was going to say. I was like, it's almost like, because I'm familiar with arcade games, and the stories are always trash because they're not meant to be story filled or anything.
Yeah.
But then, so that in a way is like Yui Bull. Maybe he's trying to make an arcade game, but I know I'm giving him too much credit, and it's just like. But that's where I kind of have my battle between like irony and did he do some of this at least on purpose? You know what I mean?
Well, he definitely did the action on purpose.
Filmmaker of all time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the whole point of the action was he just wanted an excuse to get people to unload pistols into zombies that he's created. But the weirdest part is that we're coming off talking about Paul W.S. Anderson, who made very clear a sense of visual construction and timing of his set pieces, like following the logic of the actual horror set piece itself, like the laser set piece, which has an escalating sense of horror to it, while the 12-minute like shootout scene in this has no sense of space or geography.
Yeah.
It just cuts from slow-mo to like a shot of a zombie dying to a slow-mo character doing a move to a zombie dying. You get no sense of how many zombies are there. Are they winning? Are they taking some of them out?
And there's nothing like personal about it.
No.
Like, it doesn't feel like a battle of
it's
zombie
like
and man.
completely incomprehensible as to, are they succeeding? What are they actually accomplishing? Like what is actually happening beyond someone is kicking and hitting something in the head?
Yeah.
I want to point out that some audience members might be listening to this like and thinking, wait, didn't they just jump from explaining how they got to the island to all of a sudden being in the middle of the battle with nothing much to say about the riddle?
We do that all the time.
And you'd be right, because there's nothing much to say about the rest, because it's just the most like middling, plotting, like god awful dialogue, and like it just feels like 45 minutes of filler, and it's brutal. But oh god, is it worth getting through that filler for the batshit insane back half?
Yeah,
like, absolutely.
And the weirdest part is there's also just not even like beats. Like he didn't write the action. Like it wasn't like Liberty, the cool Asian woman who can like do kicks and stuff. Like maybe we'll give her like a like some sort of arc about that or something. But it's just she just does it.
She just does, yeah.
And there you go.
And that's pretty much everybody.
No, there is one exception, and it's one of the best parts in the entire movie, because it's one throwaway line of dialogue that gets paid off, and it's the only line of dialogue that gets paid off in the entire movie, and it's in the finale, and they talk about how the one girl is into fencing.
Oh yeah,
and that's just it. They say that girl's into fencing, and you're like, okay, why did you tell me that? And then she fucking fences the zombie king motherfucker at the end, but
it's with like long swords.
But and it's not fencing. Yeah. She's totally just wielding it like a broadsword and just hammering him with it.
They were just like, fencing is swords, right?
Yeah,
any sword.
Like there's no fencing that happens, but they tried. You could see the effort of that girl does something with swords, there's so like, maybe we can let her use a sword.
There's a little bit of character. We did it, Yui. We did it.
It also does tie the ending in Lucy to the game, I think, by like having one of the characters be like I think the future villain of it or something like that, I think.
Yeah, it's supposed to be like a prequel to House of the Dead or something like that. Is what I heard.
Okay.
In terms of story, but again, I couldn't really follow the story because
the House of the Dead extended universe.
Because you really can't tell what's plotting to get to the next area and what is supposed to be character or story in any meaningful way.
Yeah, like I completely forgot why the zombies even happened. Like, do they explain that?
No, they sort of did. It was like, I know they made something gesturing at the explanation.
Because the main guy that they fight at the end is like this Spanish doctor or something like that.
It's this ancient Spanish guy who's been hiding on the island.
He's been experimenting on corpses and trying to.
He was a disgraced priest.
Yes. But here's the funniest thing is they do explain that in the plotting. That's the reason. But in the end, and they have the big moment at the end where they finally confront the guy, because they're like, they go into the lair, they go into the House of the Dead, and they go underneath and they find the underground basement where he's been experimenting on the corpses and where all the zombies are coming from. And they ask the guy straight up when he's about to kill like the last few people, he's like, I'm going to turn you into zombies or whatever. And you're like, oh, fuck. The one guy, the main guy, Rudy, he's like, hold on. Tell me why. Like, you created all of this so you could become immortal? Like, why? Yeah. And the guy just looks at him and says, to live forever!
I became immortal to become immortal.
Yeah. You're like, okay.
It's so fucking funny. Now that you say that was the note I put because me and my brother were losing our minds. Like, we couldn't even believe that was what he came up with. And that they shoot it like it's this big, like,
dramatic twist.
This is my master plan. Yeah. Like, oh, it's so fucking funny.
And one of my favorite moments just before they go, because they're making their way through the House of the Dead, trying to like get underneath to escape, but also to find their way off the island a little bit and find out kind of like what's happening. But there's a part where they go into the basement and all the characters are down there and they're kind of like checking the doors, and kind of an extension on the fact that just in a filmmaking sense, this is just entirely incomprehensible. It's just weirdly like basically framed, but so frantically edited in like unmotivated and artless ways that it's kind of like impossible to find out what's happening. But like, there are times where dialogue is also like that. And there's a guy, they go into the basement and they're checking out all the doors. And one guy, clearly, it must have been improv because it was just silent and he didn't know like what was supposed to be happening. So he just made up a line. But he looks over to the left side of the room and he goes, "Hey, what's in here?" Nobody acknowledges that he said that. And it cuts to a shot to what he was looking at. Nobody acknowledges it. And then it cuts back to the characters who don't even look over there and just go into the next area to the other side. But he left the line of dialogue in and the shot.
No, I mean like
there was no reason. Like he could have just had a shot of them walking through and moving to where they were supposed to be going. But he includes 10 seconds of this guy being like, "Hey, what's over there?"
That ruins the entire
and then
context.
a shot. Yeah. And then it is not addressed. They just move on and go to the other door.
I wanna add that it seems like it was edited by another guy, so I'm sure it was like some kind of mercenary job. And you know what? If I was given this, like, I would phone it in at a certain point, and I'm sure that's what happened this footage.
Here. And so we're like, please make
David
something we can release.
I understand they are definitely not paying you enough for this. You shouldn't be at this point in your life. I hope things got better for you after this. But like, man, you really did not put any effort in it. You like looked at the outline there. I'm like, okay, scene goes here. Ooh, he's a fucking asshole. Scene goes here.
Yeah, well, and even shortly after that, there's one where there's some sort of drama that happens underneath as they're trying to escape. I think it's when they go into they actually discover the lab where like whatever the juice is being created, and one guy who they established earlier is supposed to be like pre-med or something like that.
Yeah.
He just goes, "It's not human blood. It's mutated. It's fucking genius." And I'm like, I don't know why he knows that, but that's fine.
That's so.
But shortly after
what does it even
mean? Shortly after that scene, they're making their way out, and the zombies are like attacking them. And there's a brief moment where the one guy who's sort of sacrificing himself, and it's funny, we get this exact scene in Resident Evil when.
By the way, was this the one where it's it was the one where we tried to call him the guy from Das Boot, Jürgen Prochnow.
Yeah.
Is named Captain Kirk.
Yeah, and they specifically make that, and the characters acknowledge that joke.
Yeah, it's like
where
they want you to. They want to make sure you got them. Did you get them? No, but it's like it's just the one where he like has the he like blows himself up with dynamite or whatever.
This is the one where he points at the explosive barrels. Yeah. This is that bit. But there's a brief moment when he lifts his gun up and he points it at the main character. And the main character, and the way that it's shot, the way that Bull has shot it, it looks like that scene from Halloween 4 that I told you about, where Loomis points the gun at the little child.
Right.
And that movie investigates that idea that Loomis is about to shoot a child because he thinks Michael Spears is inside of it. So that's what I thought the scene was that the captain was pointing the gun at the main dude, and they were gonna that was gonna be a dramatic moment.
Yeah.
But then it just cuts, and it's like, no, he was just pointing at the barrels right behind the guy. But they don't acknowledge that drama ever came up at all.
Yeah.
So none of the characters addressed that it just looked like he was going to shoot him, even though the visuals told you that was what was happening.
That's what's so weird
This movie has no awareness of the 180-degree rule at all.
No,
it just does not give a shit. And it's not like the way the Suspiria remake did, where it was like kind of did it to purposely throw you off and manipulate your perspective. It's because he doesn't understand it, I think, honestly.
It's like one of the aspects of his filmmaking is properly telling you what he's trying to present, but then all the other aspects surrounding that scene is saying the opposite. So your brain just doesn't know what he's trying to really do. It's unbelievable. And speaking of just like the bad dialogue, just to add a line here, this must be written by possibly like a foreign person that knows English, but
no, actually, it's not. It's
shocking.
It's written by the duo of Mark A. Altman and Dave Parker. Mark A. Altman has a Wikipedia page. He wrote and produced this and House of the Dead 2, and he acted in House of the Dead 2. He made The Thirst, All Souls Day, Dead and Deader, Free Enterprise, which seems like a Star Trek fan movie. Hey, oh my God, Free Enterprise is a 1999 romantic comedy starring Aaron McCormack and Raphael Weigel, featuring William Shatner, directed by some other guy, and then written by this Mark Altman guy.
Oh my God.
The cover is please look it up if you can. It's called Free Enterprise.
Free Enterprise.
The cover is truly beautiful. I'm sorry. After this plot summary is
holy shit. It just looks like he's making a Star Trek poster.
Yeah, the film deals with the midlife crises of two main protagonists, Mark and Robert. Fictionalized versions of the films for director and producer. They struggle with adult career relationship problems, defiantly clinging to the geeky science fiction pop culture of their youth and taking advice from their greatest hero, William Shatner.
It says
Shatner plays a campy character of himself.
That's hilarious.
It's okay. This seems like a self-aware thing, and Phil Lamar is in it apparently too.
But JB, I was gonna say because you're talking about how you thought it might be made how like Troll 2 was made,
right,
where it was like these Italian,
that's
the
almost
Italian
correct, but it's not quite correct. And the line that I was referencing was he was like, "We got to the boat, but it wasn't there." So it's like, well, then you didn't get to the boat.
Yeah,
you know, like it's just little things like that are like it's just off, and there's so many of that in the dialogue. I thought it'd be a foreign dude, but
the one thing I'll argue for is that there's a chance this was intended as the same kind of self-awareness as the dialogue choice Resident Evil, because similarly, the dialogue in the House of the Dead games is that bad.
Yeah, like, absolutely.
It is like that. It nails that shit.
Yeah,
like but that's like a level of bad. Like, and in the presentation of it, it doesn't at all spell it out how you want to feel about it. So like, I mean, it's just like maybe that's intentional, maybe not, but either way, it's god awful.
Yeah.
If I had anything to say, I'm glad that he made practical zombies and exploded their heads.
Yeah, I will say that ending Skull Crush, pretty cool.
Oh, and the decapitation and stuff.
Yeah, thought that was pretty cool.
He seems like a 12-year-old boy with a very large budget, and like, come on, like I would trust a 12-year-old boy to get that part right.
Yeah,
you know?
he spent his money on the makeup appropriately, even if he didn't actually establish the zombies in a way that makes sense. So they just kind of like move like really fast people. Like they move like stunt people, and he has them like constantly like trampolining out of the forest and stuff. And you're kind of like, what?
Yeah, I think at even one point it does like a super jump, like it's like this super mutant.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome stuff, and I gotta say, also the fact that somehow the techno nu metal is even worse.
Oh my god! I've been waiting for this moment this whole time. The theme song to House of the Dead, where they rap, where they like
the rap
corn
song,
style rap about the House of the Dead, and then it's like
it's the House of the Dead.
It's like when Will Smith used to do a rap song for every movie he was in.
And I had captions on. Just because it was like a little incoherent as it was, and it literally said unintelligible rapping, and like like the poor caption guy.
It sounded like if LL Cool J was on like a new metal track. Is what it kind of sounded like.
Yeah.
Like not a fun version of that.
No,
it is laughable. That is for sure.
And also, I don't know if
it's so early 2000s.
I don't know if any of you guys noticed this, because I was keeping an eye out for the music specifically because I wanted to compare it to Resident Evil's kind of, because I know that these were coming out in a similar time when this was just the fad of what music.
Yeah, it was like Godsmack and Creed.
Yeah,
and
it was what music style was at the time, and at one point, and I kid you not, there's just the royalty-free dramatic like suspense noise, and I heard that, and I was like, is that the same noise from the dramatic gopher meme? And it is.
Oh my god, that's hilarious. I didn't even notice it.
He used and I don't remember if it's used twice or not, but it's just used at a random time when they're all walking through the forest, and the suspense just builds for. Again, there's nothing in the story or the filmmaking that tells you that the suspense is supposed to be building. It ramps the music up, and then they're like, something's out there.
Now you know.
Yeah. I wanna point out something. I did actually pull this up. So, the film Resident Evil came out on March 15th, 2002 in the United States.
Yeah.
The production dates for House of the Dead were May 2002 to October 2002, and it came out with its premiere in San Francisco on February 15th, 2003.
Holy shit. So it came out 11 months after Resident Evil.
And then it came with production starting after it came out. Resident Evil came out. The broad United States release was October 10th. So they must have done some re-edits.
It had to be.
Yeah.
It absolutely had to be direct references at times.
Yeah, well, because it was very clearly greenlit.
He probably just stole ideas.
Yeah, it was very obviously greenlit because of the success of Resident Evil, and they were just like, okay, what if we give you like 1/3 of the budget that Anderson got for that, and you just make something that like we can sell as similar somehow?
Yeah.
But even Anderson didn't have the balls to directly reference George A. Romero, where Uwe Boll has a movie fan in the movie who's a camcorder who's just like, wow, you've never heard of George A. Romero's Dead trilogy? Yeah. It's like iconic or whatever.
I have to hijack this for a second. I think that's a lot of what happened here is just like people getting so sick of this shit working on this that it's just like Uwe Boll's incoherence then was magnified by like tenfold because everyone around him just wants to get the fuck out of this job. Because the dude seems like a nightmare anyway, like challenging critics to boxing matches and like name searching himself on Twitter, like he did to me when I was tweeting about House of the Dead, and like he like said something along the lines of like, I said like it's like so batshit insane. I'm kind of enjoying it or something to that effect. He's like, I'm glad you like it. It's supposed to be a fun action movie or something. I mean, let me find it.
Yeah,
that's so funny.
Yeah, he did.
I really hope that he says something about this episode.
If you're listening to this, we love you, man.
Okay,
yeah, I respect you.
I actually have genuine respect for his distinct vision and more importantly as a successful grifter. But like, so because like
I really like
the other guy, the Werewolf Ninja Philosopher guy, seems like a successful grifter too. He's like done this multiple times. Like he's like made multiple films.
Uwe, if you're listening to this, I really liked the part where the main woman is running away in slow-mo and her boobs jiggle around everywhere, and then she talks about the fact that referring to the fact that zombies want to eat them. She says, "Isn't it nice to know someone wants you for your body?"
Yeah.
Which I could see some arguing for that, like some kind of like absurd irony, but like, no, fuck you, man. Come on.
Oh, this guy. God, I hope he emails us.
Yeah, oh man.
Yeah, and there's also a great bit.
Gates are open away.
There's also a great bit where everybody calls the main guy Rudy the whole time, and at the end of the movie, the military asks him what his name is, and he goes, "My name's Rudolph."
Yeah.
Badass, dude. Yeah. All right, I think we're gonna have to enter the reductive rating round and final statements on this one.
Yeah.
I got
I'm sorry, my fault there.
No, it's all good. It's all good.
Yeah. This conversation was bound to
for me. I honestly just got a couple more quotes I want to throw out there.
Yeah, no, please,
like,
please.
Who are you? Who are you? We're here to rescue you. Oh, thanks.
Thanks.
Guys, check out this book. Looks pretty old. Maybe it'll help us.
and you're getting the inflections exactly right too.
Yeah,
you're
like,
killing
like
it.
a pretty pitch perfect version of it.
You could act in this movie.
Yeah, dude. Like if he asked me to make a another House of the Dead sequel, I would definitely star in it.
You want to remake it?
Let's go ahead.
No, dude, I'm down.
I mean, the only thing we would have to do is unfortunately, we would have to revive an old technique that no one does anymore, which is the turntable technique for the 360-degree shots, where the camera whips around people at high speeds and you take the photos. Because they actually had to retire that technique after making this movie because you can possibly kill people doing it.
Really?
Yeah, because the camera's moving around so quickly while you're doing
my God,
those shots.
I had no idea.
It's a very dangerous technique, and
it was pretty dangerous.
And it's the only stylistic technique that like is unique to him while making this movie.
Why is it
one
so
of the most dangerous.
Is it like they have it on a track and it spins really quickly?
Like
exactly.
And it just go off.
That's exactly what it is.
And like people still do like slower versions of that.
Yeah.
Like not as fast as this.
I had no idea. That's cool.
Yeah, because he was doing it in a way where he could almost catch, like he wanted to catch people in midair frame by frame. Like that's how fast he had that camera spinning around.
Yeah.
And if that hits somebody going at that speed, and especially if someone's jumping in the air and doesn't have full control of their movement.
Someone's operating.
And
at the very least, they're going to be hurt. So
yeah. So, but if we want to revive it and possibly die, I'm down to make a.
Hey, for art, you got to do it.
You're thinking the wrong way. You just got to get like some kind of like amusement park ride, like one of those like spinner rides, like set that up, like put some props over it, some CGI, and then just strap yourself in with the camera and let it rip.
We'll figure it out for sure.
Anyway, for me, oh god, it's got to get the one. I honestly thought about it out of enjoyment, bumping it up, but then I got so much hives watching the actual filmmaking and how poorly done the filmmaking is that even in the ironic enjoyment wasn't enough for me to give him full credit on the ironic enjoyment, even though some of it does seem like he intentionally made bad things here or there. And I bet you sometimes he might claim that, you're just supposed to sit back and, not turn off your brain. And I'm just like, yeah, but like, filmmaking goes beyond like the conscious analysis. Like filmmaking is like, there's a lot of work done subconsciously to make, people's eyes not twist around in their head and like make people not like light their own faces on fire.
It was legitimately nauseating at points.
Yeah, like that's for me where the line gets drawn. So I had to give it the 1, but I will say it's a high 1.
Throwing at that bone.
I want to, just so I can see the entry point here, I want to agree a high 1, like with the emphasis on high, because this is like a really fun, dumb movie to like get together with friends and like, with whatever party thing of choice and like, just rip this apart. Like, it is a piece of shit. Yeah. But like, it's a fun piece of shit.
Okay, there's some all-timer line readings in this.
Lines in general.
Lines in general. Themselves. I still think about that guy looking at the blood and being like, it's fucking genius. And I'm like, what? What is what?
And the explanation of the immortal thing is just, that is so
to
funny.
To live forever.
Okay.
You just wanted to, so you wanted to be immortal. That was why you went, okay.
I'm going to give it the 2. I'm going to give it the 2.
Man.
For me, I think it's more of like a personal thing of how I view 1 stars. Okay. 1 star is when I like put it on and and like my blood boils and I want the whole
you will
thing
never
to be
watch it again.
Set on fire. Yeah, and I wouldn't watch it again, that kind of thing. Like, I just can't throw it in the same category as a few of the studio comedies that I've seen. This made me laugh far more than Daddy's Home. You know what I mean? So,
well, I don't know. I tried rewatching it a second time to get ready for this, and I couldn't.
You couldn't do it?
No, it was real. It was real hard.
It's like definitely not a watch by yourself. You have to show it to somebody.
Maybe this the first time, because it's such an anomaly and just such a crazy, fucking insane batshit movie that I could to it, and maybe. This will be like a reverse of what usually happens with me.
Maybe it'll be a 5.
I'll go to the 2 to the 1. You know what I mean? I'll be like, the second time, not entertaining at all. I don't know. But this first time, I just can't say that I hated the thing. And I leave for like hatred, like visceral hatred.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna 2 it. It's not a strong 2.
No.
It's very light on the 2.
No, have you given a 2 on the show?
Sorry.
Have you given a 2? Street Fighter.
Yeah, Street Fighter.
Yeah,
that's the only one I think. Besides Death Wish, but that was a 1.
All the video game movies are piling up at the bottom.
Yeah, Mortal Kombat though.
Resident Evil's gonna be like not too far.
No, Resident Evil will be a little bit up there.
Wes Anderson's doing it well. We got 2-3 stars for Wes Anderson on his video game movies. So.
Yes.
Hopes for that. But
I hope he sticks. I hope he goes back to that and drops the claymation bits.
Well, right now he's shooting Monster Hunter World, which they just officially announced is coming out in 2020. So
I just hope it's at least like charming, like Resident Evil has.
It's got Mila Jovovich in it. So there you go.
Really?
It does.
See what happens.
What a supportive and loving relationship they have. I'm so happy for them.
Yeah.
Yep. He
I will say I like these husband and wife movies much better than Melissa McCarthy and her husband.
Oh God, yeah. Or what's your take on Brad and Angelina for By the Sea?
I don't think I've seen By the Sea.
I fucking loved By the Sea, but maybe not for reasons that they intended.
No, exactly. That's where I'm at with it.
I gotta watch it though, because apparently
it's Angelina directing what seems like an autobiographical tale of them going on a really, really bad vacation.
Oh, okay.
And it is weirdly directed, kind of like an art drama, and it has Melanie Laurent in it too, and it's fascinating. I actually own it.
It's like pretty bug fuck insane.
Yeah.
It's like I would put it in like the Southland Tales category.
I love
like
Southland
insane,
Tales.
But like kind of good, but definitely not.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that might wrap it up for this week. That was Resident Evil and House of the Dead. Donald, thanks so much.
Just one more thing.
Sure. Go for it.
About the main thing that I think I took away from House of the Dead is that it it's sometimes helpful to remember that some people just don't give a shit about their jobs.
Yeah.
And, that's okay.
Yeah. When you got got House of the Dead on your hands.
Bowl, you are valid, sir.
Yeah.
We're not going to demand extra emotional labor from you, Bowl, to make a proper film. You just keep doing your thing.
You are a queen.
Absolutely.
We love you.
All right, Donald, this is the part of the show where if you've got anything to plug, you can do it right here.
I sort of do. Like, I have two things I'm working on that I both just kind of want to drop in secret. So I think the only solution to that is to constantly refresh your feed and check for my content. No, I'm working. I'm working. I have like what I like to call a failed podcast in the works.
Nice.
It's not really a podcast anymore. It's just kind of become like this rolling Katamari of a nightmare. But look forward to that sometime soon.
Awesome.
And then I also have one other thing that hopefully will be coming out soon that I can't talk about. So
okay, there you go. Well, if you want to keep up on either of those projects, you can find Donald at Borenstein on Twitter. And we will keep our eyes posted for that. Well, thanks so much for joining us this week. What are we doing next week, Jamie? We are doing a patron exclusive episode for all the patrons out there. You guys jumping off of zombie movies. We're finally doing our much anticipated sequel to our George A. Romero episode that we did a few months ago. We did Night of the Living Dead and The Crazies.
Yeah. Awesome films.
Which we had a really good time thoroughly dissecting those two films. And we did that episode to set up doing Dawn of the Dead and Day of the Dead because Jamie and I had both never seen Day of the Dead before.
Yeah.
And we really wanted an excuse to finally do it, and we did. So next week for patrons, for all you guys out there in Patreon land, you will get our episode on Dawn of the Dead and Day of the Dead. Both
that actually is one reference point, I think, for Resident Evil that it kind of visually too was that sort of like corridored look that Day of the Dead has that. Not to impede on your next episode.
No, and the militarization aspect as well.
Yeah,
too.
for sure.
And funny enough, also in Uwe Boll literally references Dawn and Day of the Dead in House of the Dead. Yeah. That's where he got his title from, I presume.
Yes.
So that's what you can expect in 1 week's time over on patreon.com/Sleazoids podcast. But in 2 weeks' time, we're going to be back for free listeners. We are having Chris Cabin from the We Hate Movies podcast on.
Very awesome.
And he is going to be bringing with him two Arnold Schwarzenegger, but sort of... because we've talked Arnold quite a bit on this show now. But
we're almost like getting to know the man now.
Yeah, but we're going to do a sort of meta Arnold episode where we're going to be talking about Pumping Iron, the documentary about that kind of put Arnold on the radar visually and what got him cast in Conan the Barbarian, which we talked about a few weeks ago. And then we're going to be talking about Last Action Hero, which is John McTiernan's kind of sort of meta use of the action star and the action star body.
And he did Die Hard, right?
And Die Hard, yes, John McTiernan. So so we're going to be kind of getting a little bit into the sort of meta aspect of the action star physique. And,
that rules. I'm very excited to hear that one.
Yeah, so that will be for all listeners in 2 weeks' time from now. So thanks so much for listening to this episode. And thanks so much for listening in general.
Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for coming on, Donald. Very fun episode. I think that's going to be it. That's going to wrap it up. Keep it sleazy, everybody.
Keep it sleazy.
Keep it sleazy.
Nice. Actually, I like it.
No one
ever says it.
I'm a supportive guest.
I like it.